This video is going to mention a few different heavy topics. This is the only warning I will offer, so if you are in a headspace to listen to it, now is your chance to look away. Some of it will be detailed potentially, some of it won't be. A video showed up on my TikTok For You page that made me see the Ariana Grande? I'm so tired. And Cynthia Erivo obsession in a new light. We'll get to it in a minute. Was I previously part of the bandwagon of people jumping to make fun of them and call them weird and invasively question Ariana's sexuality? No. Was I overly concerned? Also no. But did I notice something is definitely amiss? Absolutely. Everyone has noticed whether they're lying to themselves about it or not. Ariana Grande has always been small. We know this. Seeing people say that in an attempt to dismiss the concerns about her appearance is not something I care for or really have the patience for. There's a difference between being naturally small and being underweight, which is what she is now. We can all see that with our eyeballs. This is not normal, and I don't particularly care for Ariana herself saying we shouldn't be so comfortable commenting on other people's bodies. Now, hold on, don't infer something that isn't there. Don't put words in my mouth. We shouldn't judge people's looks unprompted. Absolutely not. But your fans being worried that you are too skinny isn't the same as being cruel and mean and body shaming. I do believe her saying that was a tactic, if you will, to avoid people bringing attention to, the possibility that she isn't as healthy as she would like us to think. I understand why she would say it. I do not understand why so many people would just accept it. With that out of the way, people have been treating the friendship between her and Cynthia Erivo as a meme of sorts. To me, it stopped being funny before the assault on the red carpet, which is when it seemed to then amp up. When that happened, you know how the internet is. Other clips of them began getting attention, and there was one that creeped me out. Honestly.
Can you believe that we're doing that? It's going to be so great. That joy he wanted to infuse in every frame so that when you experience the film, you see it. So I wanted to say that on there.
But it had nothing to do with Cynthia. It was like, do you see that? I don't know. The way that she her arm almost went limp and she just sort of stared at it really unsettled me. And going off script for a second, I think it's weird that people can't see two women who clearly care about each other and one is just protective of the other and not try to make something out of it. Isn't Cynthia married? And I saw a comment that brought up a really good point. I will post it here if I actually have it, but that puts things into perspective. If you befriend someone and not only do you know what they have publicly gone through, which are pretty terrible things, might I add. Everyone knows that Nickelodeon was weird. Mac Miller, the bombing at the concert. She's been through some shit. And then there's the stuff that the public doesn't know. If you learn that there's even more about someone that you care for, wouldn't you naturally feel protective of them? I think you should. And if you don't, that's a little strange. But anyway, and then fast forward a few weeks, I'm seeing the tide start to shift, and people are approaching it with a lot more empathy than they have been the last few months, really. And I saw this video.
Time to have a little chat about Ariana Grande, and it's not about what she looks like, but it is about the timeline of the Wicked press tour and how that relates to her childhood exploitation and what that must be like and how confusing that must be, that without that, she wouldn't have landed the dream role that she's always wanted. Okay, so let's go through this timeline. In January of 2024, Wicked concludes filming, and just to back up a little bit, this was a dream role for Ariana Grande. Everybody remembers the clip of her saying, "I'll treat her so well," talking about Glinda. She's always wanted to be Glinda. She finally lands her dream role. It wraps filming in January. In March, her press tour starts for the first movie. Also in March, the Quiet on Set Nickelodeon documentary drops that exposes all of the horrific stuff that these children went through on set, and she was on these sets just like Amanda Bynes. Don't tell me this stare isn't giving this stare. So Ariana finally wraps the role of her lifetime, and she's immediately hit with the stark reminder of what she had to do as a little girl to position herself in this industry to even be considered for the artistic role that she had always dreamed of. So obviously those two things happening in March, this all coming back to the surface, it was horrible timing for her at the start of this press tour, and she seems to just have been getting worse and worse, which is not that surprising because suddenly her relationship with Dan Schneider was on full public display. A lot of people were talking about that documentary, and they were bringing light to the horrific things that were done to the children on those sets, including images that resurfaced of her. She has a lot of people bringing attention to the inappropriate things that men may have done to her as a child, right as she's supposed to be celebrating the biggest role of her lifetime, which again, confusing because she likely wouldn't be in that role. We know from other kids on the set that he would do special favors and that people's careers would get really big when they would do what he wanted, which is how Amanda got the Amanda Show, because her parents would let Dan Schneider take her into his office to do writing sessions, and eventually it led to her getting her own show. We know that Ariana also got her own show. I think it was called like Cat and Sam, and of course those images resurfacing, it's very clear what was happening. And of course she was a vulnerable, innocent, preyed upon young girl, and she is now becoming a woman, coming into her womanhood and having to realize what happened and what this means and what it means in this industry. Now in June of 2024, Ariana Grande actually did an interview where she admits that she was reprocessing a lot of the things that happened to her on the shows Victorious and Sam and Cat because she was so young, and all of those clips were resurfacing from that documentary. She also talked about the survivors and how brave they were for coming forward, and the set environment, and how she was convinced as a young girl that they were just pushing the envelope with this humor and that nothing was wrong. But obviously, looking back as a woman, you can see that that was not right to be doing around children.
Speaking specifically about our show, I think that was something that we were convinced was like the cool thing about us, is that like we pushed the envelope with our humor, and the innuendos were like, we were told and convinced as well that it was like the cool differentiation. And I don't know, I think it just all happened so quickly, and now looking back on some of the clips, I'm like, that's damn, like really?
Yeah.
Oh
And
shit! Like, if my daughter, you know, sorry to, you know, just you think about it, it's like if I had a daughter, it's like,
Another startling thing that she says in this interview is that she was upset to find out that some of the content of her that she never knew was released ended up on a website. Now, you guys remember when I dove into what AmandaPlease.com was? I think that there were other websites where other people who were into disturbing things could access photos and content of these children. Now, this is at a time where websites were really the only like type of internet that we had. I think that he was catering to these men with behind-the-scenes content. We know that they were taking pictures of Amanda's body parts, and there was literally a section on her website called Body Parts where people could click through and guess what they were looking at. Now, we know that a child did not consent to that being put out, and it sounds like that's kind of what Ariana is saying, that she found out content of her were on some of these websites that were taken for the show. That is completely inappropriate, and imagine how traumatizing that has been for her.
and then the things that weren't approved for the network were snuck onto like our website or whatever it was, and that is another discovery. But I'm going into it, I guess I'm upset.
Now, that interview was June of 2024, and by November of 2025, the second Wicked press tour, she is noticeably doing worse. It is just so sad to see, because so many of these kids that were on these sets are still struggling today and will struggle for the rest of their lives, and it's all because of a position that adults put them in. The adults that were hired to keep them safe actually ended up being the predators that used them in ways that they couldn't even understand as little girls. So I'm not surprised that she looks like this. I'm not surprised that she's having a hard time.
It's true. Quiet on Set released the same month that Wicked first started getting promotion and press or whatever. What isn't mentioned in the video, though, is that her divorce with Dalton Gomez was also finalized in March of that year. Of course, there's speculation that he cheated, that she had moved on to the SpongeBob guy before the marriage was over. I'm not here to talk about whether any of that is true or not. I'm only bringing it up to say, regardless of why it ended, like no matter what happened to prompt it, I would imagine divorce is very stressful. Relationships coming to an end is a loss. Even if it ends badly, you need to grieve that loss. And grieving that loss, and when you're a celebrity, a divorce happens publicly, and you know, Wicked, the role of her dreams is finally happening, and then Quiet on Set all at once. That is a lot. That is a lot. I also want to point out that this was her at the Oscars that year, still in March 2024. And then this is her November this year, 2025. You can just see it. You can see the difference. Another way people try to shut down any concern for her weight is by trying to play the misogyny card. Fans in denial will say, we're just comparing a woman in her 30s to how she looked when she was 24. But that's not at all what's happening. You can see it plainly here. In March of 2024, she was 30 years old. 2.5 years later, she should look pretty much the same. The fullness of her face is gone. Her jaw is more pronounced, and you can see it in the shoulders too. That very significant bump where the bone is. I don't keep a close watch on celebrities like this, so I don't usually connect dots, but this person's speculation is at least right that in March 2025, she looked much healthier than she does now. I don't think it's far-fetched to theorize that so much happening in such a short time could have triggered her, as well as old childhood trauma resurfacing in front of the entire world. Of course, we don't know the specifics of what happened to Ariana on that set. If anything happened, we can only reasonably deduce, because she was there. She was a child. And even if we don't know the details, we know something happened, and we are all learning how horrific it was specifically for the other kids in front of the entire world. We can just assume that some of that also applies to her. And I can't imagine. I just can't imagine. Of course, neither I nor the TikToker are making it a statement that is what happened, that she's, it resurfacing triggered her. It's just that the timeline is really compelling. As I was watching this, I thought of Justin Bieber's behavior this year as well. Someone in the comments pointed it out too. Justin Bieber has always been kind of weird. The way he has publicly treated his romantic partners has kind of always been a red flag, and he's always been I don't know if aggressive is the right word, but I do think aggressive might be the right word. But what we saw earlier this year was next level. And what happened earlier this year? The Diddy trial. And with everyone talking about Diddy, Justin Bieber's name was brought up a lot. This video was being mentioned a lot. Now, I do want to clarify, I can't believe I forgot to write this into the script, but his team at the time released a statement that nothing happened with Diddy. So once again, similar to Ariana, I'm not saying for sure something happened, but given that we know what he's like, what he has done to minors, and he was left alone with Justin Bieber for an extended amount of time, regardless of the statement they released, I think it's natural for people to be a little disbelieving, especially since the timeline of these things line up. We learn all of these things about Diddy, and Justin Bieber goes off the deep end. Again, theorizing that makes sense. I'm not making a statement because I'm not Justin Bieber. I do not know Justin Bieber. I am not in any sort of position to call him or his team liars. I'm just saying, if that were the case, in this land of pretend for a second, in this scenario, it would make sense. Next thing you know, everyone is speculating that he's on drugs because his posting on Instagram is manic. The photos are odd and sometimes cryptic. He goes live or posts on his story, and the behavior is that of someone high on something. Again, I'm not making a statement that he was abusing drugs, but the evidence is compelling. Then there's the video performing with SZA that went a little viral. Jeanette McCurdy also spoke about her eating disorder during her time on Nickelodeon. Now, I won't dive too deep into this. I'll just tell you the screenshots and you can pause to read. The reason I don't want to focus too much on this is because hers started, as far as I understand, because of her mother. Do I think the dangers of the Nickelodeon set and working with Dan Schneider may have exacerbated it? I think it's a possibility, but as someone who has never struggled with an eating disorder, there's only so much insight I could give. People who have had eating disorders would have a leg to stand on there where I do not. I'm an outsider looking in. I just wanted to mention it because they've worked together closely and both clearly had that struggle. It's not too far-fetched, again, in my eyes, to say that it's likely more than one person came out of Nickelodeon with an eating disorder dragging behind them. I also want to note, sorry, I'm so fucking tired, man. I also want to know it's very common, amongst famous people, especially because they're constantly under a microscope, to develop an eating disorder. So I just wanted to share this new perspective and shed some light on the fact that maybe it's not the set of Wicked itself that's cursed, as people would like to say. Online, there's also mentions of how I think Michelle Yeoh has gotten so much thinner than she ever was, as well as Cynthia Erivo. And because that's 3 people in the same movie, people were just like, oh my god, what the hell happened on the set of Wicked? But please understand, it's not an isolated incident. It's not happening in a vacuum. This started back with the rise of Ozempic. It persisted with the absolutely massive sweep of plastic surgery to look more frail and gaunt. And now we're here. I just think in Ariana Grande's case, the fact that her personal and private trauma was resurfaced for the whole world to see, as well as some pretty big life changes, and then the fact that it only just barely preceded the return of heroin chic that we're seeing, makes for a compelling case. And I suggest that we not be so quick to point and laugh at these women who are clearly very close and very bonded and possibly going through something. You don't have to like Ariana Grande. I know I've poked fun at her unsavory and problematic behaviors in the past, but this is different, and it's not secluded to only Ariana Grande. Keep that in mind.